Welcome to the Work Trends Podcast, brought to you by Talent Culture. I'm your host, Megan M. Bureau. Every week, I interview smart people reimagining the world of work. Be sure to stay current with all of our interesting podcasts by visiting our page at Talent Culture Work Trends on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And of course, you can listen at talentculture.com on the podcast page. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Culture Work Trends Podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by Talent View, and I am your host, Megan M. Bureau. Today, we're talking about how AI can be effectively used in screening and interviewing candidates. AI is top of mind for all of us these days, and this is an application that hiring managers, recruiters, and other talent management leaders must know about. But before we jump into today's podcast, go ahead and ask yourself these two questions. Number one, if you could expedite the interviewing and hiring process using AI, are you open to it? And number two, how would you rate your organization's current adoption of AI as a helpful business tool? Let's get started. Joining us today is John Patton from Talent View, who is an excellent choice for walking us through this incredibly timely topic today. John is a Stanford-educated serial tech entrepreneur based in one of my favorite places, Seattle, Washington, not too far from me in Portland, for those of you who are at home taking notes. He has co-founded successful companies in multiple domains, including AI, medical devices, and social media. This company, Talent View, leverages the power of large language models to help automatically create, conduct, and evaluate interviews. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here, John. Welcome.
Super excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Megan.
Of course. Now, may I ask you, where on earth are you today?
Seattle, and I am trying to stay cool. We're in the middle of a heat wave.
Right? No doubt. I'm in the same place you are with this heat and heat wave, heat dome, whatever it is. John, we're in it to win it, right? We're going to make it through this. So to set the stage for our conversation, what is the most common misconception about using AI in candidate screening and interviews?
I'd say there's two main misconceptions that we've seen. First is that AI interviewing is something in the future, something that's coming soon, something around the corner, and something in the future. This is not something in the future or near future. This is here. This is the present. It's working, and it's working really well today. Something I keep thinking of is decades ago, answering machines were novel, and people thought it was kind of weird to talk to a machine instead of a human, right? And then people started talking to machines, leave a message, and it quickly became normal. Did it completely replace humans taking a message? Nope. But turns out machines could do most of the work, and the machines do it pretty well. I think we're in a pretty similar place now where it may sound weird at first to be interviewed by a machine, by an AI, but then you try it, you realize it, similar thing, it works pretty well. And I think in some ways it's actually can be better. So will AI interviewing completely replace human interviewing? No, of course not. But for a lot of cases, it does a very good job.
You know, speaking of cases, you've got some really great customers. Let's talk about how they initially reacted to what they experienced.
The initial reaction has been really, really positive. We've had people say, hey, you made my job fun again. You've really undersold this. AI interviewing is way better than you said. But my favorite reaction so far was one guy told me on the phone, he said, you know, my wife has nothing to do with recruiting. She's a nurse, but last night this was so great. I had to grab her and show this to her. So hopefully that worked out well for him.
Hey, you know what? We're busy. Time is money. Time is valuable. So this is no joke. This is serious. And I tell you, we are at a critical point in history with regard to AI adoption. And your insights today are extremely valuable. Engaging how the market is responding, it's truly exciting. So talk to us about what client pain points did you want to resolve when you launched Talent View?
The first thing we thought of course, was the economics. And the economics can obviously be compelling. And pick your own numbers, but let's say it costs $30 an hour to have somebody interviewing a candidate. A machine might be $3 to $5 an hour. And so that's an obvious advantage. But we were wrong about that. We were wrong that was the most important advantage. What we found with our customers so far is the direct economic savings aren't necessarily the primary benefit. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, it's economics, but what we're finding is that AI interviews can actually be better in some ways. They're instantly available to the candidate. You can immediately screen somebody right when they're interested. You don't have to schedule something with them. They don't have to schedule something with you. And I think most importantly, your humans can be saved for the higher value interviews. You can skip the screening interviews, which are really repetitive and often aren't productive. And you can go ahead and just, immediately find your best candidates. Again, pick your own numbers, but it's common instead of somebody spending, 15, 20 interviews, screening interviews to find the top candidates, AI can handle all that and just deliver you the best 4 or 5 out of those first 15 or 20, and your humans can go right to the top candidates.
Well, I tell you, you've hit the mark on this. As a former recruiter myself, with a lot of recruiters out there in our audience and HR talent that is thinking about this, the entire talent screening, interview, vetting, and hiring process is so important, but it's incredibly arduous, and that's real. So thanks for sharing all that. Do me a favor, John, please give our audience an overview of how the platform works from the candidates and the hiring manager's perspectives.
Sure. I'll start with the hiring manager, or perhaps the recruiter's perspective. The first thing you do, of course, is creating an interview. And the AI system will create an interview, conduct it, and rate it. And to create it, it needs very little information. You can give it simply a title and maybe a job description, cut, paste, put it in there, tell it how many questions you want and how long you want the interview to run, and it will, boom, create the interview. You can tune it. You can tell it which questions are more important. You can tell it how to evaluate the questions. You can say, a 5-star answer might be this, a 4-star answer might look like this, and really give it specific instructions to help tune it. And then the system will produce a link. You send the link to the candidate. However you get the link to the candidate will take the interview. From the candidate's perspective, it's really like a video interview. They see themselves on a video. They don't see an avatar. We decided we didn't want to have an avatar representing the system. We thought that would be a little bit creepy.
By the way, thank you for saying that, because that's real too, right?
Yeah, creepy is a real thing. We're very upfront about this is an AI interview. You're going to be interviewed by an AI. Just try to have a normal conversation, and that has worked really well. And I think we have had no complaints about the interface. We have had no issues with people only seeing themselves and not seeing an avatar, and we think that's accurately and honestly represents what's happening.
What about hiring managers' perspectives?
So what happens then is they will get a notification of a completed interview. They have a simple interface like you might expect that has a table of completed interviews, and it will show basic information, the candidate's name, when they took it, and also the scores. And we have a scoring system where all questions are scored 1 to 5 stars, and then the whole interview is given a 1 to 5 star summary. So they can quickly sort by who's the most recent interview to complete, what the scores are, who are my best scores, and from that, then they can go down and see a detailed look. The interviews are all recorded on a video, so if you have a key question, maybe it's number 3, you can go right to that and see how they answered that. We've had some funny stories. The video has been really helpful because people forget sometimes they're being videoed, and we've actually had examples. One guy said, he loves the video because he can go back and he can actually see people looking up, presumably on ChatGPT, how to answer the question. And so,
interesting. Tell us more.
It's very good. So he says it's been absolutely phenomenal. This particular person is just a one-man shop inside of a marketing agency, and he says he absolutely loves it. He started using this several months ago, and he has not since done a screening interview himself. If you think about that for a second, he has stopped doing screening interviews. He uses this system exclusively for all his work, and he says it's transformed his job. He does other stuff during the day. Anytime he has a few minutes, a small break, he just checks the system, see who's come in. If it's anybody who's 4.5 stars or higher, whatever his threshold is, he looks at the details, and he already has a strong candidate he can directly reach out to, and he skips everybody else.
Well, as you know, we are big proponents of a positive candidate journey here at Talent Culture. So it's really helpful for us to see this process from multiple perspectives, because every single one adds up and matters when we talk about experience, specifically candidate experience.
One of the things that we were really concerned about when we started was not only how well the system would work, and we quickly figured out the system could have a conversation, an interview, and do a very good job with that. But one of the things we were very concerned with is how would candidates react to this? Everybody's very concerned about the candidate experience. You don't want the candidates to have a bad experience. And what we found is zero pushback from the candidates. It's almost like they expect it, is one of our customers said. And of course, not everybody takes the interview if you send them a link, but not everybody does a screening interview if you have an appointment with them. And he says it's been a very good filter, because he says if somebody's serious about the opportunity, they take the interview, and if it's not, then that's okay too. And it serves as a filter. We haven't had anybody complain about talking to an AI AI or say it's weird. We even have a bailout button on it if you're taking it and you say, I don't want to do this anymore. People don't use it. It's been phenomenal. And like we said, it's like almost like candidates have been expecting it.
Well, I hope everybody out there in the Work Trends audience is listening to what John just said. We all expect it. More so now than ever. And so let's talk about some misconceptions because, we all know there's a lot of them out there right now. What misconceptions do you think, John, people have about using AI that prevents people from actually getting started?
I'd say the biggest one is that it's some heavyweight thing to start. Our typical conversation, if we talk to a customer before they sign up, is that they're running some big process to learn about that. They have a mandate from, their boss, or they are the boss. And they're like, yep, this year we're going to investigate this and look at this. And it's really much easier than that. You can jump in and try this and get visceral experience with this right away. And I think, you should read about it in a blog post. You can listen to it in a podcast, which is, of course, what we all recommend today. But at the end of the day, what you need to be able to do is, what we recommend is jumping on a system and trying it yourself. Now, of course, we're a business. We hope you try ours, but whether you try ours or somebody else, try an AI interview and see how well it works. You'll get a visceral understanding of how well this works and what this may or may not do for you. You can literally do this in minutes. Try a sample interview. We have some on our website. You can try to be, interview to be a lemonade stand manager. You can interview for a junior Java developer. You can also jump on, load up a interview from one of your existing current job descriptions and take it yourself and see what your candidate experience might be like. And only until you actually try it and get your own experience with it will I think you really understand how transformational this is and how well this can work.
So are you finding that people get hung up on how it fits into their current tech stack?
Great question. And it's not so much that people are hung up about how it gets integrated into the current tech stack. We can integrate with any tech stack in principle. The hangups are more just the political process to do that. A full integration into somebody's tech stack can be technically, and typically is technically pretty straightforward, but you need to have a strong mandate to do that. There's obviously a lot of sensitive information that goes back and forth, and there has to be a clear mandate that this is important. What we found is a great way to start is just to try it as a standalone system. Try it small scale. Crawl, walk, run. Just try it on a few jobs. Try it for a few positions. And if it works well, then maybe the mandate comes to integrate it with your full tech stack. So far, we've only had one company go directly to a full integration without using it on a standalone basis so far.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I think one of the best things that innovators like yourself can do is pay close attention to all of these misconceptions, the pushback, the deeper questions, and help educate the market based on what people need to know.
The very best thing that I can recommend, and if there's one message I'd like to get across, is try it, try it, try it. Jump on, whether it's us or somebody else, try an interview, give the AI some good answers, give the AI some bad answers, see if you can break it, see what the experience is like, and that is very easy. You can do that in under an hour, and you'll have a much, much better understanding of this, and you can have a much better understanding if this is important enough to possibly consider a full integration or a larger effort.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Well, there seems to be an obvious concern to avoid illegal, unethical, and even awkward questions. Can you speak to how the system performs to actually address these concerns?
Of course. That's a great question. And this was a significant question of ours when we started. If you've done any reading or any research in AI, there's well-known examples of AI systems doing what is called hallucinating, basically making stuff up or otherwise acting inappropriately. In some
kind of like people sometimes, right, John?
100%. Save that thought. In some cases, these mistakes can be comical, but in some contexts, of course, it can be quite serious. And you can imagine clearly nightmare scenarios in an interview. And the short answer is we haven't seen these problems, and the AI seems to be very good about staying on task. And if you think it might be interesting, I can tell a short story about why we're comfortable about that and sort of our experience with that.
Yes, we'd love to hear.
One of the things that we did when we started working on this was try to press the system. When my partner and I started working on this was poke at it, understand it, what is this good for? What can this be good at? Where are the danger areas? And imagine, playing with clay with your bare hands except for code. And you can imagine the two of us sitting around. You can imagine the two of us at a standing desk with a bunch of monitors and text scrolling by and typing furiously. And it looks like, a TV movie with some hackers, hacking something away. And we poked at it and, what can we make this thing do? Can we make it rude? Yes, we can make it rude. Can we make it polite? Yes, we can make it polite. Can we make it too polite? And yes, we can make it too polite. We call that Canadian mode. What we found was really shocking. We had to take breaks. We had to stop working. We literally sometimes had to walk away. And what we found is that what we were looking for was a simple mental model about how could we think about this and how could we describe this to others so we could make efficient decisions about what this can and can't do. And the AI stuff is unbelievably complex, but we needed to have a simple model. We needed to simplify it. How do we think about this? What's the cheat? And the cheat explanation is this. This thing is not like software. This thing is like a person. The AI is literally like a person, and it's that spooky. This is why we'd have to stop and take breaks. So a very simple way for your audience to think about AI, at least in terms of understanding what it can and cannot do, is the AI is kind of like a person, and maybe it's slightly autistic, maybe it's slightly OCD, maybe it's sometimes slightly tone deaf, but it's an otherwise capable person. It just happens to be very loyal, available 24/7, and tireless. And so once we started thinking about it like this, you could see why we would have to take breaks and step away sometimes. But I don't think we're giving away any big secrets here, but just like somebody slightly autistic or slightly OCD, if you give them very good instructions about what they should be doing, they can knock it out of the park. And they will just crank away and be consistent and be great. And that's what we found with the system. So I'm not saying we have all the answers. I'm not saying you shouldn't trust the system to never make any mistakes. But now, generally, we have a system that stays colored between the lines and is more consistent than most humans. In fact, that's some of the feedback we've gotten from our clients is that this is incredibly consistent.
Well, I tell you, this is very smart, and it's also inclusive, which I really love. I mean, I think we need to carefully walk those lines, and we need to feel confident that it's not going to be an issue. Okay, so time flies when we're having fun, John. We've got one more question to round out this fantastic conversation. What have been the biggest surprises for you and your customers?
I'd say we've had two big surprises and one smaller surprise. I'm going to sound like an ad, but the biggest surprise is how well this works and how much fun we've been having with some of the customers. I already told you the story about the guy who dragged in his poor wife for a demo, but we've had people say, and probably my all-time favorite customer reaction is we had a guy say, hey, this is brilliant. This can do my job. And he was excited about it. And we've all had the concern about, hey, AI can take my job like it's a bad thing. And this guy is like, hey, AI can take my job. And that's a good thing. And so, and of course he's not quitting his job, but he's like, this can do a lot of my job and I can actually, do more important stuff. So that was really gratifying to hear. And then a second thing was that where the value to the customer lies. We thought it would be all just the raw economics. A machine is cheaper to run than a human. But the value lies beyond that. It's better than that. We have more consistent interviewing. The AI literally doesn't know your name, your ethnicity, your gender, your age. It doesn't know any of that. It's just concentrating on your answers. We get more consistent evaluations. And on the just kind of the humanity side for your HR professional, it just releases you from the drudgery of doing the same interview again and again and again and again.
I mean, these are fantastic insights, John. I mean, I think you're on an incredible journey and it's really just beginning in so many ways. Thank you so much for stopping by our community and being part of it. We're very grateful.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here today.
Wow, that was an insightful conversation with John. Clearly, we are intrigued by the impact of AI on all that we do personally and professionally. This was a very applicable dive into how many of our Talent Culture listeners may be putting it to use in their daily careers. And yet, there's still so much to learn. I love that we have our community where we can explore this all together. So here are a few of my takeaways. Number one, the time savings alone from AI-led screening and interviewing makes a strong business case. Financially savvy HR and talent management executives are likely to explore how AI in this area may positively affect the bottom line. Number two, AI doesn't have to negatively impact the candidate experience. The right approach can balance swift processes with a personal touch. Number three, don't hesitate to ask questions about what surprised, wowed, and stumped the early adopters of AI in the HR world. world. Keep the conversation going about what's possible and keep your mind open. Thank you for joining us, John. I hope you enjoyed our time as much as I did. And listeners, please be sure to check out www.talentvuu.com. And last but not least, the Talent Culture community wants to hear from you. Number one, are you more excited, scared, or indifferent about AI playing a role in screening and interviewing candidates, and why? Number two, would AI interviewing work well in your industry, and why or why not? And number three, do you think you'd try AI screening and interviewing in 2024? Visit us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram to share your responses to these questions, or feel free to contact me personally at Megan M. Biro on the socials, on LinkedIn. And as always, thanks for listening to the Work Trends Podcast, the place to find meaningful connections at work. If you love what we do here, make sure to share our podcast with your friends and your colleagues, or send us a question. We're here for you. Use the hashtag WorkTrends. See you all again soon. Thanks for joining us for today's conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Just a reminder that you can hear all the Work Trends podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on the podcast page at talentculture.com. Be sure to subscribe so you can listen on the go and stay up to date on all the latest news you want to hear. I look forward to catching up with you next time. I hope today's information made you wiser, happier, more informed, and most importantly, thinking of how you can use it to improve the quality of your life.